says, what's going on? Woo! Welcome to Conversations of the Heart. Gonna have a special guest joining me, an incredible person. Just gonna wait for Stauna to tap in to get this conversation going. Hope you guys enjoy it. This is something that we always do. We have private conversations all the time on the phone, so this is years of conversation. So we just kind of want to bring those conversations to live, and hope that it helps people, inspires people, and get that going. So I'm just gonna wait for Stauna to tap in here for her to join. Nadia, what's going on? Vance, what's up, bro? Lisa, what's up? I think she has arrived. Wait, I'm gonna wait for the queen to come on board.
Hi.
Queen, what's going on with you?
How are you?
Good. Appreciate you doing this. Um, you know, I thought about, a good way or a special way to introduce you. I don't know. So I guess I'll start, what I'm saying? I don't know if you can hear it, but it's going to come in a second. I think you'll recognize it. I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it,
That's
but
it.
if you can,
You know what, Lisa?
I'll try to ramble off some of your accolades right now. Stauna, you are co-founder of Voices Inc. You are a board member of I Hold the Key Inc. And mind you, I have to read it because the list is long. You are a member of the Society of Human Resource Management. You are a member of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources. You are also a member of the New York Urban League of Young Professionals. You are also a member of the American Ballet Theater Junior League. You are also a member of the Opera Guild, an affiliate of the Junior Achievement Association of New York. You are an affiliate of the American Cancer Society. You got your master's in public administration, concentration in human management, human resources management, and management operations. You also have your bachelor's concentrating in criminal justice, minoring in law. So, with that said, that was the best introduction that I could possibly give you. That's the best possible one. But above all those accolades, the accolades are cool and all, but the best accolade that you could absolutely have is to be an incredible human being. You are a great person, an incredible soul. I appreciate you as a friend, as a queen that you are. I appreciate what you do in this world. You are a philanthropist, a diversity advocate, an HR executive, a speaker, your friend. I do love you, man. Thank you for everything from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for doing this here with me. The list was long, so I felt that was the most appropriate way to introduce you. So again, thank you for doing this with me. Conversations of the heart. We do this all the time. So we're just gonna give the people just kind of what we talk about on a regular basis, man. So thank you. If you want to tell people about yourself, where they can find you, and go from there.
Yeah, no, thanks to you. Thanks to you for being brave and stepping out in the arena and really taking the charge to have these conversations. I know we speak often and we share a lot, and I think it's really important that people get to understand some of what you're speaking. So I really look forward to often and always really listening on the calls that you have. So thank you for the esteemed pleasure of being able to join and learn, listen, hear, and share with you today. So yes, that sounded like a long list, and I was like, wow, okay, it's stop now.
Yeah, that is a grocery list from Costco right there. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Um, but thank you for that. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really looking forward to sharing, hoping that folks would gain something from what we shared today with our conversation. So, ready to jump in. And I don't know, I just want to say this out here. I know there are some topics that were listed. I am unclear
Yeah.
as to where he's going to take this, and just say, because we often have many conversations surrounding many different topics. And so I am all ears and ready. Let's go.
hmm And I don't know how we're gonna keep this under or at an hour. But I mean, we'll try our best. If they want us to go longer, then I guess if you have the time, then we start the live at 8 o'clock. If not, then maybe we could do a part two. Um, so, and speaking of accolades, I kind of want to see this right here is water. It's in a red cup, but it's, I'm not as classy as you yet. Mm. Um, so philanthropy. Talk to me about your nonprofit that you co-own.
Yeah. So, I'll start with that. From a very, very young age, I don't know exactly when, but I just, I had a fervor to, and I still say it today, and it resonates deep within, to leave the world better than I found it in some way, shape, or
Mm-hmm.
form. And that's where that kind of came from. And Voices Inc. started at John Jay. Shout out to all my John Jay folks.
Mm-hmm.
With Deborah, who I think is on right now. And the big story of it was that, we're in college, we don't have a ton of funds, but we wanted to do something to help many of these causes that we saw. A lot of these things, like breast cancer, AIDS, all these pieces, we had friends and family, people at school who did have relatives or themselves who suffered from. So the fervor there was really to see what we could do as voices together, right? What can we do all
Right.
together without having a lot of funding? And so we started the grassroots fundraising efforts by just going asking for money, donations, thanks to all of
Mm-hmm.
my friends and partners, as we started to just do a lot of afterworks to earn funds for that and show up and walk. And, we had like 13 people at one point. It was like 50 different people walking in Central Park for breast cancer. And so we continue to do that, and it's continued to evolve to now where, we've gone around the boroughs and Westchester and, got clothes and taken it to shelters. We've done feeding the homeless. We try to do that every year, and especially at Help USA Shelter in Blake Avenue in Brooklyn. So we continue to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of work around, and we'll look to expand that soon when we're safely able to do so outside. But we're actually just speaking about doing some like clothing drives, things of that nature. So that's Voices.
Mm-hmm.
It's really an opportunity for any persons who are interested in joining our voice,
Mm-hmm.
at our voices, to really do what we can to help the world be better than we found it. So
Perfect. And where can people donate?
donations can be made via PayPal at current. Voices, teamvoices@gmail.com. That's who we are. And donations can be made there. We're looking to broaden our reach. For any person
Mm-hmm.
who are interested, certainly feel free to reach me, DM me, ping me, what
Mm-hmm.
have you. But we look forward to sharing more as we go through
Mm-hmm.
and our reach.
Good. So I used to work in the nonprofit sector myself. And I used to do a lot of training classes and teach training courses on employment and job readiness training, and creating curriculums behind that. And one of the biggest things that was kind of jaw-dropping from me was that I kind of took advantage of, like, just saying, hey, like, I thought everybody knew kind of how to go in and do a resume, kind of how to go in and do an interview. And I was very shocked that when I went in to do these things, to do these classes, that people really didn't know how to pass an interview. They didn't know what to put, what not to put on a resume. A lot of people didn't even know where to start with a resume, right? Didn't know about a reference letter, didn't know about a lot of these things, So I was just like, wow, it kind of shocked me a lot, So when you talk about somebody like yourself, right, and of course, being a philanthropist, but also you being so successful in the corporate world, and navigating those waters, especially for Black people, and women of color, especially. Like, what kind of advice or like would you give about navigating those waters of the corporate world?
That's a great question and a great point to really hone in on. Near and dear to me. Not unlike yourself, even just folks I meet every day and just at random, there is a real lack of clarity or understanding of just how to make that entry. Like you said,
Yeah.
be on a resume. What's that look like? There are a lot of misinformation out there. People unclear about what to add, what not to add, what to include, the length of it. So, really feel like there's good opportunity to continue to share that information, to say, no, your resume does not need to be one page, right? Don't do your service. Really to think through, well, how do you format that? We have things like Word, thankful for Google, that gives a lot of that information. But if you're really looking for a role or continued growth in the corporate arena, it really is a good idea to speak to a person who's a professional who could help you with your resume. As a Black female navigating through the corporate arena, there are many challenges. And I say that because not long ago I was consistently speaking to myself saying, there are a lot of these influencers, a lot of groups out there that are really cultivated for creatives. And I'll put that in quotes because I have creatives and entrepreneurs, especially women of color, right? And so you see a lot of fervor and a lot of work around that. But what I hadn't been able to really find or see is a space for young Black females to really help cultivate a tribe of sorts, really to think through some of the challenges that we found and how we've navigated through it. And I've had young women come and ask me that question. I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I'm often, able to meet a lot of young Black females because I am sitting in a career field of HR where I'm often meeting many people. And there's really that question: where's the support? Where's that conversation about, how do I speak to a promotion? How do I find out how to be promoted? How do I, assert that my worth is X or my worth is Y? How do I ask for an increase? What does that look like? I don't think I'm being paid well. How do I begin to understand what the right pay is? And often people say things like, make sure you know your worth, or you should know your worth. And that makes sense, and then it doesn't, right? Because we're invaluable. You don't really put a worth on a person in that sense. And so I break it down to have people understand, really, a salary is truly a culmination of a value of that seat. It's really a pay for that function to happen. So when you're thinking about what should I be paid, it's really first, what are they willing to pay for that work to be done? What does that look like? And when you ascertain that, then how you show up in work every day, what you do, the value that you personally add to that is what calls for that increase. So navigating that conversation is really tough for many people. And I've often offered a lot of advice to say a few things. One, don't assume that somebody knows. Don't wait for somebody to say, hey, I think you should get an increase. That seldom happens. In your conversations, very, very comfortably, you can ask for a conversation with your superior, right? Simply saying, I have some questions. I'd really like to understand where I stand, and I'm well placed in my position. I'd like to discuss that with you. And when you go into that conversation, really have your information with you and not making it so personal, like I need, I should, but really saying this role calls for these things. And here's what I do, and here's the value add with the other things that I do. And in light of that, I really do believe that my pay should be increased by X. And know what you're paying for, not really sitting there and just thinking through, well, what should I, be paid? But come in knowing what that looks like, coming with research. People often would come to me and say, I looked on salary.com or I looked on this, and those are not reputable sources. You can find information even on the Department of Labor website, but you have to think through there are many different companies who have many different titles, and the role can be very different. And so that's not always the true source of things, but really thinking through, doing a market study, looking at many different places to see what does that pay really look like in this particular location, because these things are also driven by market, right? The pay in New York City is going to be very different than the pay you get in Buffalo, for example. They're different markets. So really understanding or getting that education, being learned is always going to be helpful, and coming in with facts is always going to stand your ground. So when you're able to sit here and say, as a person of color, I don't feel unfairly paid, and we know that happens. That's a fact. But here's what I have to offer, right? I've done the research and I found that on average, this role pays this much. Here's what I do in my role today, and here's what I add to that. And as such, I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that I should be paid at this space. If you're denied in that way, you have clear documentation to show that. Walk away and send
Right.
that email. Thank you for that conversation. Just want to recap what we shared. And this is what we walked away with. So that you're able
Mm-hmm.
to, if ever needed, to speak to exactly what you brought to the table. So it's
Mm-hmm.
things such as those that I find folks are very unclear about what to do, and it's really not limited to the Black females. But I think what I'm yearning to do, and I have a fervor to do, is to really build that network of young Black professional women who can not just be mentors, because it's that separation of mentors and sponsors, and we've spoken about that, but to
Mm-hmm.
provide that path of how do you do this, or how to think about this as you come up into this space so that you can grow even faster than we have.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Perfect. That's dope, man. And so I think a lot of this conversation has to continue because in our community, I feel that a lot of times we overwork ourselves to try to prove our worth. And because there is a stigma, that we have to work 10 times harder and we have just this much rope to mess up, right? And so a lot of times you don't want to ask, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to be bold enough to ask, oh, hey, let's talk about this raise because what if they don't give it to me and then they might, target me and things like that. Like there's a lot of things that go on in the workplace, especially for Black people, right? And that affects their mental health. Like they'll kill themselves working 14, 15, 16-hour days to prove their worth, not understanding that sometimes you got to work smarter, not harder. And that's a big thing. Like when I go in and I do these workshops and they at a job that they just maybe just don't even like, right? But they're just like, no, but I have to prove myself. I'm afraid of my boss, So like, and that plays a big role. And a lot of times just, hey, my mental health is here, right? Every day I'm going into this job I hate. I deserve this amount of pay, but I don't feel like I can go in and ask this question. And I don't feel like I can go in and have these conversations because they feel less than.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge and part and parcel to everything. So first, I like to remind myself and everyone, know thyself. And I say that often, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
had this, so you probably know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
We have been socially, psychologically conditioned, especially
Mm-hmm.
color, to
Yep.
feel less than. I refuse
Yep.
to allow anyone to call me a minority. I refuse
Mm-hmm.
to be labeled as anything that is inferior or anything denoted to that piece, period. I will not allow that into my energy space.
Mm-hmm.
Know thyself, really, for me, truly does mean, when I look at our young men and women, to say,
Mm-hmm.
understand where you come from, and not that you began in slavery, right? I was fortunate
Right.
to have my dad, being a professor, share with me things of, African culture way before slavery began, to speak, and
Right.
my cousin who's on now, who speaks to me often about just that, the kings and queens, the math
Mm-hmm.
and science created, the money, the pieces my dad shared with me when I don't even know how old, that Socrates learned in Africa, and how they don't share that history with us. So I understood that I came from a lineage that was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And even
Mm-hmm.
from that still, right, to understand, if we don't have that much energies into that space, to then understand that
Mm-hmm.
we come from the loins of people who suffered through a brutal transition over the
Right.
Atlantic Ocean, hurricanes
Mm-hmm.
and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Made it on these ships, who laid next to people who were dying, crackers, all kinds of challenges that we cannot even imagine, and survive that to make it here to this new space, this new land.
Right.
Then survive that space with the diseases, the different foods, then being forced to, reduce themselves beyond their culture to adapt to a new one. And out of
Mm-hmm.
all of that, then slavery and all that came with it, and that's what we come from. Like, we
Right.
are the strongest of the strongest, and
Mm-hmm.
that says a lot. I think a lot of people, when going in to ask questions about, the things that they need, and I thought this one time, I had a conversation with a manager of mine one time, and I said, I was very, very candid. I do feel that I have to work 10 times to just get through. And we had a very,
Right.
very open discussion about that, and she hadn't realized that. She said, it always just seems that you're doing everything. And that's what it seems that has to happen.
Right.
And that's true. That's true. We don't get simply recognized. So when
Right.
I'm in my seat that I have now, I am often, if not always, shining a light. I am
Mm-hmm.
creating change and saying, in the organization I work for now, there isn't a promotion system. It's really just managers saying they want to promote. I refuse. I refuse to have that. I need a lens to understand, where are our diverse candidates, right? Is that even something you think about? Are you recognizing the talent in your organization absent of the ones who look like you? Because we know neuroscience tells us that if you have a brain, you have a bias. We all have biases. And so to own that and to speak to that, but it's to say, I'm shining a light on that so we could do different and be different. And so we somehow have to be charged to, we're asking to open the door. We need to then also walk in boldly. I own this. I belong here. I work hard. I need this and I should get it. But I think a lot of it is the lack of confidence on just even how to get that approach, which is why I'm saying it's super important for us to have those networks and to build those networks to be able to get some of the answers that we don't have.
And I think even for myself, in every company I've been in since I was probably the age of 17, I brought my friends and people of color with me in every single company I've been into. And so even when I left, now they can go in and do the same. So I think it's also about just opening doors for our own people as well. You know what I'm saying? And so making sure that you say, hey, listen, I got you in, but you make sure that now you do the same for others too. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
I think we're too often afraid to do that, right? I hear that sometimes. Interestingly enough, just last week, I had to deal with a young lady who reached me and said, if she's afraid, she feels like it's reverse discrimination, right? This young lady.
No, I don't care nothing about that.
Really not understanding the unique opportunity to one, educate, two, listen, to educate.
Yeah.
For that space. I think what I hear often as well, and I'm a big proponent of just that, opening the door so that everyone can come in. I shouldn't feel comfortable being the only Black female there, right? In too many rooms, I'm the only Black female and the only young Black female or the only Black person. Too often, I have a duty to myself. I hold myself accountable to create more space for others who look like
me too.
Don't have that fervor or don't have the information enough on how to make it there. And it's not for everyone. Right. There are a lot of people who are seeking just direction on how to do that. So I think it's incredibly important that we continue to create those networks and to have those conversations on, what are you challenged with, right? Everyone is different, but what is your challenge in making that shift into that space? Because it's not, it can be done, right? Many of us are doing it and it can be done, but we owe it to send our hand back and say, let me pull you in too. Yeah.
Yep. And so with everything that we just said, from, communicating with our bosses, right? And communicating with our coworkers and our supervisors and upper management, right? Now, in our community, I feel like there's a big breakdown in communication, right? Now, that can start from when you're a little boy, a little girl, you know what I'm saying? And I'll say that even for young boys, our Black boys, right? I hear all the time, Terrence, men don't know how to communicate, right? So the thing is, I was taught at a very young age that it's very important for me specifically as a Black boy to learn how to communicate and communicate effectively, because it can help me as a teenager in school, on the job, in the boardrooms, talking to your bosses, when you're looking for this raise, like when you're looking for promotion, right? You have to learn how to communicate and communicate effectively at a very young age. And, I say Black boys because, I always feel like women, they got the blueprint at a very early age on how to communicate and communicate clearly and effectively, right? They're encouraged to talk. They're encouraged to express. They're encouraged, to be vulnerable, right? And it's very telling for me because whenever I do some of these workshops and these training classes for self-help and self-love and things like that, you know who's in there? 97% women. And then you might have a boyfriend in there who got dragged in there by their girlfriend or their mama.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, man, there's a stigma when it comes to men, when it comes to communication and expression and self-love. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is something, that is a narrative that we have to change, because it's like, hey, communication, if you talk too much, it's feminine. Everything is feminine, right? And that's a fear for men. But
It's not okay.
We have to learn how to teach our young boys how to communicate more effectively at a very young age and give them permission to, because you can't complain about them being 25 and don't know how to communicate when they never had the permission to communicate at 5.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think by the time they're 25, they have 20 years worth of built up anger, aggression, pent up everything just within here and don't know how to release it. But then now you expect him to know how to communicate, but he was never given the permission to. So, you know, that to me, I'm very passionate about that.
I know. Let's unpack that a little bit, right? So, one, you mentioned a couple of different things here that I think can be packaged and parceled together to a point.
Yeah.
Firstly, I think I saw a lot of people did highlight that yes, the big portion of communication is effective communication. What does it
Of course
look like to communicate effectively? So that's one piece, and we'll get into that. But even thinking through, let's talk about these young men, these young boys are passionate about.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard me say that or seen me even write that. We have to really work on ensuring that we validate feelings and emotions.
Yes.
And we do that often to our little girls and boys, right? Be quiet, don't speak. The things that we say are not really being clear on the messages that we're sending and what's being received. And that they're not always one and the same. What's intended to be sent is not what's always received, and goes back to the communication. And so really ensuring, and I've always said this, so much that I'm blessed to have a young king. It's really that education of understanding that, one, I am here to teach you and help shape you, right? I say often I give myself permission, and I need for a young man to understand that he has to give himself permission. He has to stand up and be able to speak, and sharing what that really looks like and how to do that appropriately and inappropriately and what that means. How our as Lisa is so pointedly speaking to, how our Father speaks to that is one thing. And then there's that crucial piece of the feminine, right? Why does that sit in such a negative connotation, right? As human beings, we do both have the polarizing pieces of ourselves are the masculine and the feminine. We have them, right? We have both of these energies. And it's to say, how can we do better in embracing that? How can we do better in teaching that is safe, that is valid? Emotion is healthy. Emotion to be had, anger, upset, happy, all of these emotions are healthy. What we're not doing, or doing a disservice to ourselves and to our children, is teaching them how to channel that emotion, what to do with that emotion, filled with it, and how to carry that forward. So for the young man who is unclear about how to communicate, because you know what? He's having a feeling. He's having this feeling, and he's not sure what to do with it. And so he doesn't know how to put words to it. One, we are not often arming ourselves and even our children with the words enough to truly describe what their experience is. We limit our really just words like, I am sad, or I'm happy. Am I confused? Like really infusing to say, let me help you get to what is that emotion that you're truly feeling, that you're truly experiencing. And then we can work to figure out, well, how do you channel that best? So we're not doing the best job at that. And so we find out that, I often quote Renee, I'm of the school of Miss Renee Brown, and understanding that vulnerability is at the crest of power, right? And so whenever you have to do something that requires your bravery, it requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you it requires you to face the risk. And so we have to start learning to embrace that part of ourselves, because it's where our character begins. And that's where we're doing a disservice to. Right.
And I always say that communication, expression, and vulnerability is power. And I also feel that we're raising our boys in an Amazon generation with a Toys R Us mindset. You know what I'm saying? And where's Toys R Us? They're gone. They're out of business. Like we've got to be able to teach our boys to be multifaceted. And that's the thing, because this plays a role in how they grow up and have relationships as well, whether that be friendships, romantic, because truthfully, it's like, all right, I'm a boy. I don't know how to communicate. My value system tells me that everything is about money. My value system says I need to go out and provide, right? And be the hustler and make the money, right? it's like, oh, and then once I get the money, I get the power, and I get the women. So then it becomes of how many women I can sleep with, right? So, so to me, it's the fact of we really have to get to a point, right? Like we have to get to a point where we teach our boys that communication is valuable, expression is valuable, vulnerability. All those things should be a part of your arsenal. So when you go out into the world, you know how to be more than just one way. Because in this world that we're living in, women are making a lot of money, right? Sometimes you may not be the breadwinner. If you are, great. But if you are not, do you know how to act in that relationship, right? Do you know how to walk in that path, right? Because a lot of times,
how do you show up in relationship? How do you show up in relationship if what you've been taught and what you understand is that your value in relationship to a female is money? How do you show up in a relationship when you're not clear and keen on understanding that your entire being is valuable? How do you show up in a relationship when it wasn't really stressed, taught, or even expected of you to really build good character? How do you show up in a relationship if you don't have the foundations of what it is to be a good person? How do you show up in a relationship when you have, an understanding rather than the overstanding of how to love yourself and knowing who you are? How are we ensuring that our young boys becoming men, princes and kings, how do we ensure that we are taking you on that journey to become that? How are we as women doing that? And what are our men, our kings doing to do that? What's that look
like? And also we really have to get to a point where we say that that providing isn't only financial.
Sorry.
Right? I think because some women don't need you to finance them, some women need you to be present. They need you to do different. Well, we already know you, but but we need you to be present. We need you to be there. We need you to listen, to be to be a shoulder to cry on. You know what I'm saying? Like there's many different things that you could provide in a relationship, right? Yeah. Beyond just the finances. And even if you are the breadwinner, it does not mean that you can't be multifaceted. It doesn't mean that. It means that you could provide the finances, yes, but then you have to still be able to do A plus B plus C and D. Just like women can be the breadwinner, they can take care of home too. They can communicate. Like there's a lot of these different things that I feel.
Think about this for a second. When we speak of women can do, women, speaking for women as a whole, this is me being bold here, right? We were put in position to then, and oftentimes enough in spaces to have to, right? And so there's a scary space of now young men who, as aptly said there, who weren't taught how to express themselves emotionally because they were taught that emotions were weakness, right? So now we're in a society where you have on average that more females are graduating from college, more females are getting into the corporate arena. And so when you find that more females, and I'm speaking more to the Black community even, are finding themselves in positions of being breadwinner, where is his space? What does that look like? And so again, begs the question to say, how am I teaching you to show up as your whole self when I haven't given you permission or taught you what it means to be your whole self? So now, is there not a fervor to want to have to find it, right? Because a lot of what you're speaking to, especially as far as the females and being able to do different things, it's not, a lot of females weren't taught to do these things. Like, we're taught to necessarily go out there and be the breadwinner, but understood back against the wall, this is what I'm left to do, I have to do, I am doing it. Now you have, a culture where that seems to be the norm now because it's happened over time. What's not happened over time is where you've had some men shift from being able to be breadwinner and just being lost and not sure about, well, where is my place? What does that look like? Right. So how do we now attend to that has happened, because it's happening more. It's happening more and more. So what are we doing to attend to that piece?
Right. And then what happens when you don't know how to move in that type of a relationship, then you get angry and you take your anger out on your partner, right? And I think that's the frustrating part, because a lot of women are like, I can't speak to him, right? I can't talk to him. Like, he's angry. I am the breadwinner. I make the money, but to him, he doesn't feel valued. He doesn't feel like he is valued because he doesn't.
Who owns that? Who owns that?
Oh, we have to own it.
And I'm asking because I think there's opportunity on both ends, right? And I
Yeah,
soundly to that in saying that I don't own the responsibility of a man to be a man, feel a man, and do a man, because
of
I
course.
can't teach that, right? But I do own a responsibility for my relationship, for my partner to create space for them to exist in
Hmm.
a healthy way, right?
Right,
That means not sitting here showing up my quote unquote money in their face and really trying to show up to
right,
them. But at the same time, it doesn't require that I limit myself to be smaller to accommodate.
right,
So
right.
you find that we have, and again, going right back to that communication, are we having
Hmm.
that open communication? Is my person, my partner, um, able to sit here and have dialogue with me in safe space? Does that person feel safe to really share with me the challenges of what they're
Hmm.
experiencing? Or am I here to help that process? It's a really interesting dance that we
Right,
find ourselves doing. I don't
right.
pretend to have the answer, but I certainly
Hmm.
spend time thinking through a lot of that.
Right. And it's up to us not to self-sabotage our relationship, right? I think a lot of times, like when you're in this space, you'll end up self-sabotaging a good thing just because you're not the financial breadwinner and because you don't know how to move in this particular situation because you're one track minded, So I think it is up to us to not self-sabotage too. And then also to really understand life, like the life. And with life, there are ups and downs. Like 1 minute, like you could be up here living life and having the grandest of lives, but life is crazy and life could take you through a whole bunch of ups and downs and arounds. And it
Yeah,
can
let's
land
talk
like one day
COVID,
you could be up
right?
here and the next day that you could be down here. You know what I'm saying? Especially like when you're dealing with jobs. You know what I'm saying? I know so many people that were laid off of corporate America, big banks, making $200,000 a year and it's gone. Right.
Yeah.
And your life gets turned upside down. So I think it's not about always, oh, I have to be this. I have to. No, it's learning how to adjust to the situation that you're
Right.
in
So
and
speaking of
continue to
that,
try to be great.
with what's happened with COVID, so many different things that have happened, and when we speak about the joblessness that we've experienced in this space, and thinking
Hmm.
about it, if a man's value for himself is so
Yep.
caught up in his worth and he's unable to provide at this time, what does that look like in a time that's already stressful? What does that bring to a relationship? What
Hmm.
challenges does that bring to a relationship
So
if
many.
right? Because even when you speak to it and we say he's not the breadwinner, but what if he is the breadwinner? What if he is?
Hmm.
And what if now
Hmm.
he isn't, right? Where
Right.
all of what's happened, the situations that we found ourselves in with COVID causes that he isn't. Now what?
Right.
What does that look like?
Right.
That really goes back to, okay, if he wasn't given that information, where do we now think through the responsibility of himself to be his best self, to get into the
Right.
and to really get the understanding of how do I do that? How do I show up as my best self? And
Hmm.
is there space enough for this in this world? Have we created safe space enough for men to really go back and peel the
Hmm.
layers to really now decide? Because I found for me, um, I say this often to my friends, they're probably tired of hearing me say these things, but we spend much of our lives being told who to be and how to be.
Yep.
And at some
Mm.
point, and I'm in my 30s still, right? In our 30s, I find, in my experience anyway, you then get a fervor and a responsibility to decide, right? Like, I know I was taught these things. I know these
Hmm.
things served me, but do they serve me now, right? Because now
Hmm.
I get to decide. I'm a full adult. I get to decide who I am and how I show up in this world. And I have
Right.
a responsibility to find the things that I need to be my whole self, the best self. So in deciding
Hmm.
who am I choosing to be, how am I choosing to show up in the world, I have decisions to make on how to get clear, get clean,
Yep.
and create space for that. And so often
Hmm.
we find that we're not taking on the responsibilities for ourselves in that space because we're too busy
Hmm.
living in what we've been told and taught to do in the first.
Right. And that's kind of where we go with the societal pressures, you know, um, for men and women of what they think that we should be. That can come from your family, your friends, uh, TV, whatever the case is, right? I feel like with society, they put a lot of pressure on what you should have by a certain age, right? For men, it's about the money, it's about the job, the career, things like that. For women, it's about are you married yet and how many women that you could bear. I mean, excuse me, how many children that you could bear, excuse me. Um, And to me, those are very unfair things, you know, especially for women. You know, I hear people, you know, like people like aunts and cousins, oh, so when you're going to have a kid, when you're going to get married. And it's just like, whoa, like, like time out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know that concerned you, right? You know what I'm saying? And then even when you get one thing, let's just say if you get married, then it's like, okay, so when you're going to pop out a kid. And it's just like, there's a lot of things that's insensitive and actually could mess with people's mental health because that's really huge. Because I've had friends that have had multiple miscarriages. They're trying for children, right? And they can't.
Right.
And now you got your grandmother, your mother, your aunt, your cousins. It's like, oh, so when you gonna give me my grandbaby? When you gonna give me my kid? And it's it comes from a selfish mindset, and it's unfair. And you don't know what you're doing to the people that you say that you love.
Right.
And that to me does a disservice, and it creates this dysfunctional generational rhetoric.
So,
And I love the old school, but sometimes their rhetoric is creating a lot of dysfunction and mental health issues in our communities too.
let's talk about that then, right? So the mental health piece, and you know me, I like to really wrap around the emotional health because I do find a great distinction between the two, right? Emotional health is part of mental health, but it is its own separate arena in of itself. So the narrative that you shared, in fact, in speaking to just that, right? And really I sit in it, right? And understanding the noise that you might hear. And certainly I think when you think about your emotional health and what that means to you and what that looks like, I find I created space. I don't get a lot of that in my family. They know better. But creating that aura that there are particular things that I will not allow. And it's not particular people, it's particular things. And so particular narratives, if you are proponing this narrative, you're not allowed to have that in my space. It's not safe for me. And so it's disallowed. And while it's not done in a harmful way, right, the expectations that are set, it really forces us to go back into ourselves, into our choosing now. Because you know what, the way the world is and with the information superhighway, and I find, for me personally, Instagram is not always the most healthy thing.
Of course. Yeah.
All the pictures and all the et ceteras, and before you know it, what you're allowing into your space can have a real direct impact on your thinking, and thoughts becomes things, right? And so be mindful of that. There's some that you can do in creating that space to ensure that people understand what you will allow, what you will not allow. And we have that responsibility, again, to ourselves to create that.
Yes.
But often don't find that we are able to, for whatever our being, right? To step boldly and say, that's inappropriate, right? And I get to say that to a person, to say that's inappropriate, and I will not allow for that to happen, or really, really staying away from that. Because until we start doing that, then we're exposing ourselves to hurt. And the challenge, especially about emotional pain, it's so very different than physical pain, where we know that, you know, you get peroxide, you put a Band-Aid, and so you have a plan, right? So many of us have been left to conduct our own surgeries on ourselves for these emotional hurts that we've been carrying from childhood throughout, from the notes that we hear, the triggers that happen, right? So, you know, I'm been digging into what is my habit, what is my action, and where is that really coming from? Where is that feeling coming from? Because I often find that it's a testament to a feeling that we felt at some point, and now anytime a feeling comes about because of an action, now we're going back to that habit, that unhealthy habit. So really thinking through all of these things that are often thrown on us from friends, from families, from social media, etc. How do we protect ourselves in that space? And that only space is the ownership that we have to ourselves to create healthy boundaries for what we'll allow and what we will disallow. And it's not about people, it's really about the things.
Right. And I think a lot of times it's harder for some people to create those boundaries with family because they don't want to, you know, hurt somebody's feelings, or, you know, especially if it's grandmother or mother or, you know, or something like that. It's, you know, it's
why it's so hard, but it has to be such a real thing, because you know what? If I love me so much and I have a duty to myself to be me and continue to grow to be that as I can be, if I limit it to just certain people, I'm still allowing that toxicity to enter in. And I have to stop that. And anytime I read this quote someplace, right? Anytime that we're about to say something or do something or show up somewhere, and we're thinking, you know what, I don't want them to think, or I don't want them to feel, we are not allowing ourselves to show up as our full selves. We're not expressing who we are. And so we're diminishing parts of ourselves every time we do that. And rather than doing that and saying, I want to be responsible in ensuring that they receive this in the best way possible. Because I don't own your feeling. I cannot, right? I listen, I sit in HR, and so I'm often terminating people, and I do it more often than I'd like, but I know that I don't own that feeling. I know that I own how I deliver it, right? So I can be responsible with that piece, but I cannot own how you feel. I can only own that I can be responsible in what I share. And so we have to get bold and courageous and vulnerable.
Yes.
Really standing up for ourselves, right? Owning that piece.
And that's powerful to me. It's because I'm on the same wave as you, because I love me. You know what I'm saying? And I love me. And you're not going to get but so close, you know what I'm saying, as far as your toxicity. You see what I'm saying? And so you can't project what you want for your life on me.
But don't
right?
we do that all the time? So many parents I hear all the time, and that's really something that I think often, right? Who say, I want my child to have everything I didn't, as if to say their child is the exact replica of them. Like, I am not my mom, right? And so, and that we're different in many ways. But for me, for example, and I'm going to speak about my sister, I know she's on here. We're very different people. And if my mom led with, I'm going to give them everything I didn't have, rather than I'm going to ensure that I build great character in these little humans that I have, to ensure that they're ready for this world that they're about to face. And where I know Stauna, for example, you know, I'm the one who wants to be left alone. I'm not really necessarily interested in getting the pat on the back, or you did well, or what have you. My sister may be the one who needs more of that, to understand the individuality and what that really calls for and what that needs, rather than just making this decision that, you know what, I know what I didn't get. My mom didn't do this, my dad didn't do this, and so I'm going to absolutely do this for my child. And then that's not what the child really needs. And so I think we often do that with ourselves and with others, really making these assessments for what is that really isn't.
Right. And then also kind of living vicariously through your child and trying to get them, you know, it's like you said, just trying to get them to have things that you wanted that you couldn't achieve, or that you just didn't achieve.
Correct.
And all of that stuff is very toxic, super toxic, and it's a lot of pressure. And you have to give your children space to find out just who they are, you know, and who they want to be, because that's truthfully the most important thing, you know, is give them the room to express themselves and not put yourself on them. And then that's where
right. We all have have our gifts, right?
Yeah.
We've all been given different things. Like, my parents are both educators. I love that part, but that's not my gift. And imagine if they shaped my life to really direct me to something other than what was instilled in me, what was given to me. And so such an important piece in understanding, or having that fervor to not be selfish, because we're all self-interested, but really finding where that line is between selfish and self-interest, and really towing the line to ensure that we're not coming over. What's in my I'm sorry, somebody asked what's in my glass.
Of course, you know what it is. Wow. So I'm glad that we're having this specific conversation, because there are a lot of people out there, and truthfully, who may not even want to have kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have friends who don't want to have children, but they're saying, like, oh my God, Terrence, you don't understand. My family's pushing. They're pushing. It's so, you know, offensive. You know, they don't understand. I don't want kids. It's just not what I want. But they're pushing, and they push, and they're like, it's almost like I just want to have a baby because I want to shut them up. And I'm like, please, don't do that. Yeah. You want to be able to, if you want to bring life into this world, bring it because you want to have it, right? You might, because some like that's.
I find we don't take that serious enough. That's a huge responsibility. You are
huge
with the responsibility of growing, teaching, grooming, a life with its own dreams and its own feelings. And we're having a hard time with our own, right? And so having to sit here and help a little person understand what that means and what that looks like is such such a unique and I think profound responsibility. I certainly marvel at it all the time, right? I don't have any children, and I'm not going to answer any questions to anybody who's asking why or if I should. But I think it's a unique and a big responsibility, and I don't know that we give enough light to just what that truly calls for. And I think it's all the time because we haven't been taught to think about it as being such an awesome responsibility as much as we've been taught to think it's just a duty that we have in the world. And I think both there's space for all of that to exist at the same time. Right? And we can talk about, the flip side of, the pressures of really navigating through family and, that corporate piece that we were talking about earlier. Like, when do you pick? How do you choose? What does that look like? How do you balance? Can you have it all? I hear that in my circles more often than not, that we discuss that.
And listen, the late Tupac Shakur said, since a man can't make one, right?
Yeah.
Right. Since a man can't make one, right? It's like, we shouldn't be able to tell somebody, you know what I'm saying, when and how that they should create one, right? Like that's the rhyme, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? But he said that, but that shouldn't just apply to men. That should apply to your family too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't just apply.
Right. I think two people.
Right.
Here's the thing. I think I don't sit here and lose light to the idea of the man's responsibility in creating life and nurturing. I don't lose sight of that. Right.
Right.
Our responsibilities in the process are different, but there's still responsibilities in both ends. I think I don't think anybody gets to tell any person when, where, how, or what have you that they should make that decision.
But they do.
Independently, people, right, and that's where we have to stop that, right? I have no issues whatsoever boldly stepping out and saying, pardon me, but that's not for your conversation. You haven't earned the right enough to have that conversation with me.
And I admire that.
That I get to say that. There are very few people who have earned the right enough to speak to me and even question some of those topics. And I think safely a lot of people know not to, so I don't get that a lot. But I do think it's something that that no one gets to really own for any person outside of themselves. I don't think truly.
So when it comes to mental,
that some people need some pressure. You hold your pressure, okay?
Nah, no pressure here, man. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to mental health, like, what are some of your best mental health practices? Because for me, I like journaling. You know what I'm saying? I know some people like, what, men journal? That's like, it's not like a Dear Diary thing. You know what I'm saying? I like to journal, right? I like to get it out. You know what I'm saying? So what's some of your best practices?
To be quite frank, there are a couple of them because I go back into the need that I have for my emotional health and really getting to learn and over time understand what that felt like. And I'll share that in, I tend to be very vulnerable in some of my experiences and sometimes maybe too, and I need to find safety in that. But there are a few things that I identify for myself that feel like a replenishing. You give a lot of yourself into the world. And so for me, especially in all of that happened with COVID, and I felt like the world went through a very crazy roller coaster ride. And roller coasters are fun, so it's not even the most appropriate term. But from coming into the year, really hopeful that the year was going to be great, to going to Kobe passing away, and that was like...
that hit me.
And COVID and just the depression of that piece, to then getting angry with George Floyd and all of the racial upheaval that we've just seen more plastered in our faces. And sitting in a space with executives where I was constantly being called to be part of these conversations, lead these conversations. And I was finding after a time that I hadn't created space for my own feelings because I was busy speaking to a lot of my white counterparts about their feelings. I don't want to say the wrong things, or sitting in the conversations and leading panel discussions. And so I do know for me that I got time to understand, what does it feel like to be replenished when you're not replenished? So one of my things is travel. It's always been.
Oh, I know.
You know what? It was a fad. It was always a thing for me. And that now I'm not able to do that the way I would like to. So there goes that.
Right.
Writing was a thing for me. I think I started that in like the 7th grade. Here's the problem that I found that I have with doing the journaling. I do it, and there's so many thoughts that are moving so
Mm-hmm.
rapidly and rampantly up here that it just seems that the thoughts are coming way faster than I could write them. I will write a book in my head. Okay, literally, I have page 2 written, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just writing, the first sentence of page 1. And so that became
Mm-hmm.
a challenge, and finding different ways. I think this is where great connection comes to play. So I do write from time to time, but certainly understanding and identifying. I had some great conversations today with some friends of mine about, friend, best friend, different levels of friendship, and
Right.
really being able to have those dialogues that afford you the ability to really share and
Yeah.
do what you're feeling. So you kind of get it out there. So it's not just sitting with you, or you're not
Mm-hmm.
just having a conversation, which I call the rumble, right? From
Yep.
Brene, rumble in your head about what you're thinking, what you're feeling, but you're able to express
Mm-hmm.
that outwardly. And whether it's to have a person listen, to share, to give insight or what have you. So for me, it's that on a work days, like yesterday was one of those days where people sometimes don't understand. I will stop working whenever that kind of happens, or pause, if you will, and
Mm-hmm.
no TV, no phone, nothing. I'll just lay on the floor, and I could lay on
Mm-hmm.
the floor for probably an hour, just laying on the floor, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing. It's just great to just be in what I call nothingness.
Right.
But I think certainly dialogue with friends, certainly writing does help, and just nothingness. That those are some of my things
Mm-hmm.
for my emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on pieces like being able to really ask for what I want and need,
Right.
because also a crippling thing of what do I require right now, and
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm doing or saying really helping me get it? Because sometimes it's really just that I need a hug. I just need a hug.
Yeah, for
I need a
sure.
hug. Sheesh.
Mm-hmm.
And most
I don't
people
mean to
would
cut you. I don't mean to cut you. We have about 2 minutes left. If you guys want us to continue this conversation, just let us know in the comments.
hold on.
If not, then
You're a dear friend of mine, so I do this for free with you. But
oh yeah,
yeah. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, yeah. If you want us to continue this conversation, then just let us know. If not, then we got about a minute left, and then that could be it. So I guess if you want to finish your thoughts, you got a few seconds. Okay.
All right, I'm about to throw
All
the
right.
cash app up here, guys. No, I'm kidding.
All right. So look, I mean, people are saying to keep going. So rather that, then I'll restart the live in a couple minutes. And I'll post this part, and then I'll come right back on, and then we could continue right where you left off.
Yeah, let's hope my Verizon Fios keeps working.
I wasn't gonna say nothing, but I wasn't gonna say nothing since you brought that up. That's
I
on
just
you.
want to put that out there as a disclaimer, right? That let's just hope that keeps going. Did we cover
All right, cool. Huh?
did we cover our topics or no? I'm not sure where we went.
Yeah, yeah. We did, but there's still some more. So I'll restart the live in a couple minutes. And we'll go from there. All right.
I'll get a new bottle. Thanks.
I'll get some more water. All right. See y'all in a couple minutes.
All right.
All right.